and welcome to Filmi Ladies. Happy 20th anniversary to Veer Zara, a movie that many people enjoy, and I particularly enjoy because it has Shah Rukh in a Vardi, and also it lets me cry, and it has great music, so there's lots of reasons to love it. We both really like Veer Zara, and I've seen this movie like 1 million times, and I feel like I have more opinions about it now than I did in the past, which is kind of amazing to me. Beth, have you seen Veer Zara many, many times?
No, and just once, and actually, we do not both really, really like Veer-Zara. We both
It's
really,
just
really
this
like Shah Rukh.
collective love of the Shah Rukh taking over. I was
Maybe.
like, Beth, you love it too. You just don't know it yet.
If you see it 12 more times, maybe you'll love it.
I think along with that, you should also watch Devdas, and then we'll somehow manage to change your mind about that too.
Oh no. No.
It'll be like
Friend,
Freaky Friday.
friends don't let friends watch Devdas.
Sal made me watch the Vimal Roy
That's
Devdas,
true.
so either she's a genius or she's not really my friend.
And to be fair, my statement applies to the Pansali Devdas. The rest of them, like,
Yes.
I would not encourage my friends to watch them, generally speaking, but that's the one where I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's an avoid, yeah. Okay, so I was unaware of the fact that you do not love Veer Zara as I do. So
Hmm.
please tell me why you don't.
All right. So going into this rewatch, I fully expected to be like arms crossed, humph. Oh my God, I don't believe I have to watch this. Because I think I've only seen it once, and my memory is that it is very schmaltzy,
It is.
which it is, I would say,
Yes.
and not in a way that works for me or interests me. Um, I wasn't arms crossed. Like I had an okay time. I did fast forward through some of the courtroom stuff, despite the Rani Mukherjee of it all. Like she was very annoying in this movie to me. Partly her, partly the character. And uh, Shark doesn't really work for me very well in this movie.
Oh,
I
really?
know. And I was most excited to see Amitabh and Hema. So I don't know what's going on with me. I guess my 70s self was like, oh, yay. But the only time I cried was when they were talking and Amitabh was telling Preeti that they were the teachers in the school. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. That's so sweet. Public service. Oh. And the rest of it I do find really schmaltzy in a not particularly interesting way. However, I had a lot of fun reading through the Wikipedia article and looking at all the scholarly commentary that's been quoted there about does it mean this? Does it mean that? I would like to get into some of that with you. And I would just like to point out that my friend, who is a professor here of Indian cinema and is herself from Calcutta, is quoted in the Wiki article. So I was like,
Okay.
oh, that's my professor friend. So that's great. But so yeah, so I'm sure that this movie has a lot of meanings, and I'm very interested to dig into that. But sort of the other it's one of those like if this weren't Yash Chopra would I even want to be willing to rewatch it, and the answer is no.
No.
And it's not as bad as Jab Tak Hai John to me, but it's just no patch on his earlier stuff.
Yeah.
But even as a freestanding film, regardless of who made it, I just think this is kind of a version of schmaltzy that doesn't work for me, and I do include the songs in that. They don't. And Lata, oh, I don't like her voice in these songs for Preeti at all. I mean, I don't really like her voice at these songs anyway, but especially for someone as young as Preeti, I don't like it. Um, so yeah, this one's really a want for me.
Okay.
And if nostalgia is a big part of why this film was popular in the first place, so let alone not talking about now when we're nostalgic for it, then of course that's not going to work as well on someone like me. So,
Right.
this film's not for me, and that's fine.
I'm surprised that Shah Rukh in this movie doesn't work for you because I love Shah Rukh in this movie.
He's a little obnoxious, like the way he's yelling at her in the beginning, and like he's right, like
Right.
she did misbehave. I just think the whole we were together 2 days thing is like a little it's a bit of a stretch. And sometimes, I'm willing to forego disbelief, and sometimes I'm not. And this time I wasn't inspired, and I
Yeah.
can't really explain why.
I feel like Veer Zara works for me only because it's a Yash Chopra movie and only because it has Shah Rukh in it. If it
And
weren't
in a
for
uniform, which I know is a special
Yes,
weakness
and
of
in a
yours.
uniform. I
Yeah.
know I was like mentally making a list of all the movies in which Shah Rukh is in a uniform, and I was like, this one, Mehuna, Jawan, and I was like all happy thinking about it. I was like, yeah, Shah Rukh in a Vardi is the best Shah Rukh. Also, Sad Shah Rukh is also a subset of Shah Rukh I really enjoy. So like Sad Shah Rukh in a Vardi, come on, that's like catnip for me. That's like my best movie ever. So I think it's the combination of Yash Chopra and Shah Rukh that works for me, and the cinematography, and I love the chemistry between Shah Rukh and Preeti, and I love the music. So all of that works for me. But if I try to like critically pick it apart, there was so much about this movie that makes zero sense. Most notably, the amount of time they spend together. So this time I actually thought about it. I was like, how much time? Okay, so there's the first time when he sees her in that like bus thingy, and then he rescues her. And then the day that they're traveling to Kiratpur, so that's day 2. And then there's the third day when they have the Lodi, and then he has to drop her off at Atari station. So that's 3.5, maybe 4 days max, right? And then cut to the next time he sees her is in actual Pakistan, at the Dargah, and he sees her there, but that's it. So that would be what, an hour? That's not even a day. That's like an hour. And then he's like, he has to go. So
And
that,
then they have the goodbye in the archway that's on the poster.
right. Yes, there's that
That's
also.
another 10 minutes.
Hour. Yeah. Like maybe let's give it an hour. We're being generous here, an hour.
Yeah,
So I was like, 22 years in jail or 20 years in jail or whatever for a girl
22.
that you have known for 3 days. That's not I'm not willing to spend even 2 hours in jail for a person I met, but
I
I'm not
was
this character
I
either.
was thinking about that, and because I didn't remember the time frame from when I had
I didn't
originally seen
either.
the film. And I thought, if he'd been in prison for 3 years, 5 years, that would have done a lot better for me.
Yeah.
And then I know we wouldn't have had dramatically doddering Shah Rukh,
Right.
uh, who, by the way, okay. Is it supposed to be 2004 in the now part of this film, in which case the clothes are wrong for going 22 years prior?
Right.
Or is it 2004 in the before part of this film and they've projected forward to 2026, in which case, well, we now know things are wrong, but they wouldn't have known that at the time.
So time wise, I thought that when the movie is set, which is 20 years ago, but time wise, I thought that they meet in the 80s.
It should be. Yeah.
Right. So
And
let's say they
it
met
doesn't look
in
like it.
1984. Let's just assume
Hmm.
that for a second they met in 1984, and then he's in jail for like the 20 years whatever. And then in 2004,
Hmm.
in that time, present time,
Hmm.
I
Is
feel
now.
like I'm in a Neil Gaiman novel right now. But then in 2004 they like reunite or
Yeah.
whatever, and now 20 years later we're
Yeah.
talking about this movie. Those clothes are completely wrong for the 80s.
Completely
There
wrong.
is no perm. There are no shoulder pads, and Preeti's outfits are extremely revealing for 1980s Pakistan. That makes no sense. There's
And
a
I'm
lot
sure
of
the helicopter is
translucence.
wrong, and like
Right.
all the army stuff, our Air Force stuff is wrong. And
Yeah. Manish Malhotra really took a lot. I mean, Preeti Zinta looks
she
magical
looks
in this
beautiful.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he took so many liberties with this film.
And the blonde tips on Sharuk, just the early 2000s boy band of it all, which I noticed
Exactly.
that in the prison now sequences, he just has the gray shoe polish on over the blonde tips.
Right.
It's so funny. I had not remembered that. I've never seen anyone point that out before. I'm sure many people have. And I just couldn't stop laughing.
I feel like Veer Zara is the only movie in which I've seen Shah Rukh with like the frosted hair, like the
I think
frosted
so.
tips, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I know like Akshay Kumar and a lot of
Mhm.
other people did do it in that era, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel like this is, and the frosting is particularly noticeable in the Lodi song, to the
Yeah.
extent I was like, those pastel colors and that frosting on Shah Rukh is not working for me. But yeah, so I think it's supposed to be the 80s, and Manish Malhotra, you can tell, is kind of like phoning it in to some extent, because there's literally an outfit that Preeti Zinta has worn, like this Georgette rust colored outfit,
Oh,
that is identical to the outfits Madhuri Dixit has worn in Dil To Pagal Hai. Like,
uh-huh.
those fitted, like chiffony Georgette outfits that she wears.
Mhm.
And I was like, what? So I think that's supposed to be the 80s. And the whole like, I'm willing to go to prison for 22 years for a girl I met for 4 days is kind of whack. And also, her wanting to break off her nikah and go against her family is also whack. And the fact that this person is willing to resign from the Indian Air Force, which he does, because that's the only way that he can be with her, is also whack. I come from a military family. I do not know a single person who would ever resign from the services for a person, any person.
Well, your family doesn't have Yash Chopra narrating their life, I guess.
We don't. I was like, clearly, I'm not a lover, I'm a hater. Because
Same,
I would not do any of
same.
these things.
It just it doesn't work for me.
It's not, it doesn't make sense. And I think if you rationally look at it or logically look at it, it definitely doesn't make sense. I mean, even certain things like the ease, I was amazed by the ease with which they just cross the border, like back
I
and
wondered
forth.
about that too. Yeah.
I actually, to the point that I went on like a whole rabbit hunt, rabbit hole, trying to figure out what the visa processes are, because I do know some Indians who've been to Pakistan and
Sure.
Pakistanis who've been to India and stuff like that. Most notably, my friend Abbas explained all the visa situations to me. It is hard. It is hella hard to
Yeah.
get a visa, even if you have like a very good reason. And I'm sure back in the 80s to get a visa, that must have been like insane. So that also makes no sense. I was like, oh, okay, so I can go to Pakistan as easily as I can go from California to like Oregon. Okay, cool.
So
Um,
I was thinking, I'm like, let's remake this movie, but have it be the US Canadian border and just be like,
right.
oh, come on over. Hey, it's fine.
Yeah. They were like, do you have any plants in your trunk? Nope, I don't have no plants. Does your dog have a rabies vaccination? Yes. Okay, go. Cool. That was insane to me. Also, the ease with which they just kept going back and forth.
hmm
And I could not understand, why was Ronnie so overly emotional, sentimental slash melodramatic about this. Like, I completely understand that she's an attorney and she wants to make a mark. And if we're talking about the 80s, then being an attorney
hmm
in the 80s, a lady attorney, I can
hmm
understand how it's very important to her. But the way she's constantly tearing up, I was like, okay, why are you so interested in this story? So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense to me. And I also do find Rani's character a little bit irritating.
It's too bad because I like the
Yeah.
idea of her in this role, but it doesn't, this is not it for me.
Yeah. Do you like Preeti's acting in this movie?
Yeah, I do. I do. It's
Yeah.
not my favorite of her roles, but yeah,
Right.
I think she's good. I think she's her interactions with Amitabh and Hema are quite sweet, I
They're
think.
so sweet.
And so I'm gonna suppose there's supposed to be about a 10-year age gap between her and Shah Rukh's characters, right? Something like
Yeah,
that.
that's what I assumed.
She's about 20, he's about 30 or
30.
something.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's not the worst age difference in the world. And I understand that she's got this whole I like her opening song about I am the way I am and I'm not
Yeah,
going
I
to
love
change. Like
that.
that's really cute. I don't know that it really establishes a whole lot, but at least that's what she says to herself about
Mm,
herself. Cute song, she's fun in it, no problem.
yeah.
So I can see why she finds this romantic and that she, but it's interesting that she's not the one who makes the first overture of it being a romance. He does. But I don't understand why he is so enamored of her and that, like you said, he gives up everything. Um,
Yeah.
so, and it's not because Shahrukh isn't selling romance in his usual way. I think
Right.
he is, but there's
I
why
actually
her?
and he says that too, right? Like
Yeah.
when they're going up the helicopter, whatever, he
hmm
says that she's not even the most beautiful girl he's ever met, but there's something about
hmm
her. The
Which is
something
what
the
is the
something about
something?
her bit reminded me of Dil To Pagal Hai, where
Uh-huh.
whenever he's talking about Maya, it's just this kind of like je ne sais quoi. It's this thing,
But like at least in that
an
one,
emotion. It's a butterfly, you
he's
know.
they're artists and they can at least bond over their shared art and her amazing skill and things like that. Like I don't feel like there's a whole lot there in
Yeah,
Zara that he would have observed. I mean, maybe that's not true. But he doesn't know the conversations she has with his aunt and uncle and things like that.
yeah.
So I mean, they kind of
I
hint at it to him, but and they push him, obviously.
yeah. I think I mean I feel like the only thing that would really okay, so if I was trying to dig into this, I would say that there's probably two things about her that really appeal to him. Number one, he's a military officer, so he probably lives a very disciplined, very regimented life, as one
Hmm.
has to. And he engages in these very risky things as part of his job on a daily basis. And so meeting someone who's very brave and borderline foolish
Hmm.
and very spunky and exciting and doesn't seem to be bound by any sort of rules, even rules of family or society, I feel like that would be instantly attractive to him because that's
Mm.
probably not something he can do.
Hmm.
Secondly, I think most folks from the military have a very strong sense of duty. It's very like country above all and that sort of thing. And so her sense of duty of wanting to make sure she does right by her nanny,
Hmm.
that would probably also tug us at his
Hmm.
heartstrings, where his initial impression might be, oh, this is just some stupid ditzy spoiled rich brat, but then it's like, oh, she's so sweet and she did this, which also I find very endearing,
Oh, it
right?
is
Like I
very
think
endearing.
that's so
Yeah,
adorable.
it is.
Like this is a girl who really does love her nanny very strongly and who's willing to do whatever she has to make that said nanny happy. So I can
Yeah.
see how that would appeal.
Hmm.
But is it still strong enough for you to do all of these sacrifices that you do? I'm not sure. But that is why I said that this movie only works for me because of Shahrukh, because Shahrukh can sell this in a way no one else can. Absolutely no other actor has the ability to sell this because people would just be like, this makes no sense. But there's something about his acting where I mean, I am a diehard Shahrukh fan, so there's no there's no objective opinion here. It's just going to be all subjective. It's a fan talking. But I feel like he really sells his kind of like almost like obsession with her. And they seem a little bit codependent to me, which is weird. Maybe it's also the fact that he's technically an orphan and he's been raised by his uncle and aunt and he's just looking for a connection. Like, I've got to imagine his life is a little bit lonely, where it's just him and his
Yeah.
co-pilot person.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It really only works for me because it's a Yash Chopra Shahrukh work.
Is it your
Um,
favorite of they have four movies together, right?
Yash Chopra and Shahrukh, you mean?
Hmm.
Well, I don't like Dil To Pagal Hai much, so that one's not it.
And Jab Tak Hai Jaan, you don't like, if I recall.
I don't like, but I've seen it like 6 times.
Right. And then,
But
of
I don't like
course,
it. I think it's terrible.
and then Dar,
Um,
which is
I
so
love
different and by
Dar.
far my favorite of their
Yes,
movies together.
Dar
Like
is
no
phenomenal.
contest. Yeah. But
Yeah.
very, 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 very different from this
Yes.
and all
No,
the
Dar is
others.
phenomenal. I
Yeah.
mean, as far as like Yash Chopra's romances go, I actually like his other romances more. Like I like
Yeah.
Silsila, I like Lamhe, I like Chandani. I like all of those more than I like this one. This
Hmm.
one, it's a Shahrukh fest for me. And I think he looks his hottest in this movie. Like he looks so good in this movie. And it's not just in the Vardi, like even in all the other outfits, he looks really good. I love his expressions in all of like the sad songs and things like that. I love his chemistry with Preeti. I know that okay, I don't know if you know this, but Yash Chopra initially offered the role of Zara to Kajol.
I read that and I have a hard time with that.
I would have really noped out of this movie. She is not. Can you imagine? She would have just been screeching for 3 hours. I like Kajol when she's in a movie like Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, where it's playing to her strengths of being
Mm.
screechy and funny. But I cannot imagine her doing Zara. I feel like only Preeti Zinta could have done this role because it's kind of like this child woman person who's not fully formed, but also does have a lot of integrity and is like
Mhm.
a really nice, decent person. Like I want to be friends with Zara.
Yeah, sure.
And I feel like only Preeti really could have done justice to this role. So I'm glad that she's in this movie, and I
Mhm.
think she and Shahrukh really sell it for me. And I think Preeti looks absolutely adorable in all
Yeah.
those like pastels and the long
Mhm.
earrings that they put her in. And Yash Chopra said that he wanted to um because Preeti had this very like westernized
I saw
image and he
that.
wanted to
Yeah.
see it. And I was like, yeah, I mean, she
Yeah.
rocks a salwar kameez like nobody else in this film. So
I, I
um
I was thinking while watching this that I do, and I didn't do it before this recording, and I wish I had found out some Pakistani opinions about this film.
Oh,
Like, I don't
okay.
even know what our friend Asim, Pakistani Belgian, slash British, thinks about this film and the
Yeah.
depictions of Pakistan therein,
Yeah.
because that is obviously a big, 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 big piece of this. Like,
Yeah.
this is not just a romance between people. This is about, obviously, about partition once again, and, this kind of
Yeah.
thing. Um, because in some ways I feel like I mean, again, it's not going to get made now by
Right.
a mainstream. Um, I was looking again at that horrible Modi selfie with all the stars in it, and
Oh
just being
yeah.
like, ugh. And I'd forgotten that Rajkumar Rao is in that. I'm like, man, you too. Like,
Right.
um, so eh, I'm not knowledgeable enough to say, do I think this is subtle? Do I think this is helpful? Do I think this is thoughtful? I don't know, but it's certainly
Yeah.
different than some of the other depictions of
Right.
Pakistan that we have seen in mainstream Hindi films.
Yeah.
Um, I was also curious, are there any Pakistani movies like this that do it in reverse? And I really wonder. I don't know.
I
I know
don't
nothing
think
of Pakistani
so.
films. Nothing.
I've seen a lot of Pakistani dramas. They call Pakistani TV shows dramas for some reason.
Mhm.
So I've watched a lot of Pakistani dramas. Honestly, I had to stop because the xenophobia towards Indians in India was getting too much for me.
Mm.
It's just like constant in their dramas where anytime someone is a villain, they're always Indian. Which, why is that Indian random person in Karachi? I have no idea, because most Indians have no interest in going to Pakistan, myself included. But it got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, where I was like, this is completely irrelevant to the story. Y'all need to stop.
I mean,
it's
turnabout is fair play, I guess.
it's bad. It's like, it's bad, and it's very, I mean, Pakistani dramas are very bad because there's very good acting. I have to say the acting is amazing. That's what drew me to them. But eventually I just couldn't take it anymore because it's very like, pushing orthodox narratives all the time. Like in
Mm.
their dramas, the actresses, whether it's Mahira Khan or Sanam Saeed, who I think is so talented, or who's that other actress I like, Sajal Ali, very talented actresses. They're basically just playing housewives,
Mm.
and they just read magazines all day, and that's their life, and their mother-in-law tortures them. So it's very like stuck in the past, regressive stuff, and I just couldn't take it. There was a show I wanted to watch. It was called is it called Dasna? It's set during partition time, and I wanted to
Mm.
watch it because it has Fawad Khan in it, whom I like, and it has Sajal Ali, whom I love. Like, I think she's so talented. You've probably
Mm.
seen her in Mom. So that's
Yes. Yeah.
the one Indian movie that she's done. And I just couldn't take it. It was very like, if you're Indian, you're the most evil person on the planet. And if you're Pakistani, you're just made of perfection. So I couldn't take it. But I would imagine, just based on the content I've consumed and refused to contribute to views anymore, that I think Indian cinema is actually way better and way more charitable towards talking about Pakistanis. I'm not talking about movies like Gadar or Gadar 2, which are absolute trash and
I mean,
drivel.
if you're going to say
But
movies, then they have to be
yeah,
included.
but except for Gadar and Gadar 2, I think actually Pakistanis are depicted far better than
Mm.
they ever depict Indian people. So in that, I'm
Although
like, I won't even watch their movies
you're also
anymore.
comparing cinema to
Well, they don't have a
TV.
film industry.
Well, they have
What
some
film
film
industry do they?
industry.
Their movies are produced by Indian people. They do, like, they make like what, 2 or 3 movies a year, and most of those are
I
produced
truly don't know.
by,
Like,
they
I
don't have a
truly
film
don't know.
industry. Like, the last good Pakistani movie that came out was Joyland, and that was banned in Pakistan, but it was shown in India. It was literally shown at the Kala Ghoda festival in Mumbai, but it wasn't shown in Pakistan. So, like, if you're going to talk about like censorship and stuff, that is not like, when a Pakistani film that is eventually shown at Cannes cannot be shown in its country of origin, but it is shown in Mumbai, that, like, I feel like that says a lot
Mm.
about, media and censorship and stuff like that in Pakistan. So I think Veer Zara actually paints Pakistanis in a fairly nice light. Really, the only villain in that movie is Manoj Bajpayee, and he's
Right.
just this like jerk who's hurt because his fiance is in love with someone else, which I can understand why he's hurt about that. But everyone else is like, Kiran Kher is a nice person. Baman Irani is a person who is very stuck in his ways, but he's not evil.
They kind
Divya
of pulled
Datta's
that one out
character is
at the
nice.
very end. I was really hating Bowman Irani until the very,
Yeah.
kind of the last little
And then he
bit,
kind of like relented or whatever.
but
But I
he
have a
does
soft
say
spot
is
for
it.
Divya Datta. Actually, I counted in that speech, he said Izzat almost 4 times.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want someone to say Tyag and then I'll be happy. But no one said Tyag. So I was
Hmm.
sad about that. But he did say Izzat a lot. I thought Kiran Kher for a change was nice because usually she's too screechy for me, especially in Devdas where she's just screaming for 3 hours straight. But I thought she was kind of nice in this movie. Um, I like
She's
the
fine. I feel like anyone could have done that, but
Oh
whatever.
yeah,
She's
for
there.
sure. Farida Jalal could have done it.
Oh
It
yeah.
also has a very typical Yash Chopra role scene. Like in DDLJ, there's that scene between Kajal and Farida Jalal, like daughter and mom, where
Hmm.
the mom is like giving her like life lessons or whatever. And this one has the same one with like Preeti Zinta and Kiran Kher, where Kiran Kher is like, men don't love like women do, blah blah. And I was like, oh, that's a typical Yash Chopra thing to do. Um, Also, the courtroom scenes are very long. Why are they so long?
They're very long.
They don't end.
Fast forward button.
I did fast forward those scenes for sure. It is a
Ah,
long movie. The runtime was 3 hours, 18
it's
minutes.
very long.
And I've lost the patience for long movies, Beth. Like I can do 2 hour movies and I can do even like 2 hour, 2.5 hour movies, but 3 hours and 18
Very long.
minutes. It was a lot. I feel like they could have easily cut out so much and it would be fine. Also, what is with these like aging things that they do to Preeti Zinta and they make her look really weird? Like what is
I
that
mean,
other movie?
they leapt her from 20 to 60.
Yeah.
And I love when we look at movies that are X number of years ago, but also that's what they're trying to just that same age, that same year jump is what they're trying to portray in the film. Because now, of course, we know what these two people look like 20 years later. They don't look
Yeah.
anything. And
Yeah.
yes, those characters are not doing fillers and whatever else
Right, right.
that these real people are, but they are not that on the mark, which is
Remember when
interesting.
we saw Kal Ho Na Ho, and then at
Yeah,
the end of Kal Ho Na Ho, you discovered the
yeah,
whole movie was in flashback, and Saif
yeah.
and Preeti look like they're falling apart. They look decrepit, and I was like, Preeti Zinta does not look anything like this.
No,
I literally follow her on Instagram, and
yes,
she's not that
no,
person.
no,
So
no.
yeah, their ideas of aging. I mean, I don't really have a problem with the way that Shah Rukh is aged because he has lived in prison for 22
Yeah,
years,
that one's a
so
little
that's
more
fine.
excusable. Yeah,
Yeah, but
except for the
Preeti's
frosted
aging.
tips with the gray,
Yes, yes.
because he would have had a haircut in there somewhere.
He did give me a little bit of a K-pop vibe, I have to say.
Yeah, yeah. I yeah, I mean, but we'll just assume Preeti's out in the sun a lot with the schoolgirls that
And the
she's
stress and the
doing.
grief, she's lost her whole family. She
Yeah,
basically
she has
just has
lost her whole
Shabo.
family. Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is with like Shabo and also with Bebe because they're basically like caretakers in this family. I think Baby was a nanny or a caretaker or whatever. And Shaba and like they choose not to get married and have their own family and they just like live with this family, I guess. Is that a
Well,
thing? Is
we
that
love
okay?
selfless servants to the sort of
Yeah.
noble rich, right? Like that's a thing that exists all over any kind of story that has rich people in it. There's often,
Yeah.
you know, the sort of unyieldingly loyal, happy servant because we don't want to think about what it actually means to have that kind of job.
Because also they believe in Tyag, okay, Vant.
Right. They do deserve, they do believe in
Because
Tiag.
the way Divya Datta's character, which by the way, I think she's so endearing in this movie,
Yeah.
the way her character is written, you can tell she's a diehard romantic. And
Mhm.
like, I wanted something like that for her. Like, okay, fine,
Yeah.
it's Zara's decision to move across a border very easily without any visas, apparently, or whatever. And she goes and lives over there. That's okay. But
And
like,
she can inherit land apparently as a
yeah,
non-citizen and all that. I'm like,
but
okay.
she's also not related to them either. So how is she going to inherit that?
I guess
Like,
they
I
changed their
mean,
wills, question mark?
yes,
Because they think
in
he's dead. So,
yeah, so they could write it or maybe it's
oh,
actually a in a trust. I don't know. We're probably
the
overthinking
bus
it.
crash. I do not
You
think
did
of
not
Yash
enjoy the
Chopra.
flames.
Well, I'd forgotten that it burst into flames actually, and I did kind of go.
I did find the
um,
flames dramatic.
yeah, I don't. I know I say this fairly often on this podcast, and I'm working on it. But you know, when you're Yash Chopra,
Mm.
I'm not sure what excuse you have for cheaping out on certain things like age makeup. Just choose to show the bus in a different way.
Right.
Just show it in a still photo in a newspaper. Like we don't need to see it. You can convey that without doing a very short but badly done special effect question mark. Like I yeah, there were maybe they wouldn't have taken me out of the movie had I been more absorbed in the movie, but I was kind of like, come on,
Mm.
guys. Like there were all these
Yeah.
little moments of like, where's the production value that you famously have?
Yeah.
Why isn't that present here more?
I do like the rest of the production value, though. I mean, except for the bus bursting into flames, everything else works for me. Like, you can tell no expense was spared in terms of like sets and things like that.
Yeah,
And it's very
mostly it's there.
pretty.
So when it's not, it's kind of like,
Mm.
whoop, what's going on? And
Yeah.
like the prison looked very fresh and tidy and thing, but I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it's a new facility. I don't know. Um,
Right.
but
I think that was actually shot in Pakistan because this film was
I
partially shot
wondered
in
about that.
Pakistan. And I
Yeah.
Googled it. I was like, okay, but what was shot in Pakistan? And I believe the courtroom scenes, I think, were shot
Hmm.
there.
It's a
And I
very nice
think the
courtroom.
prison scenes, yeah, I think those were shot there, but I don't know.
Hmm.
Like the article didn't tell me what scenes were shot there.
I hope
So
that
it's
the
like,
building, kind of that colonnade they're in when they have their goodbye, that's on the,
mm,
that's on the
yeah,
poster.
yeah,
I
yeah, on
hope
the poster.
that building was beautiful, whatever it is.
Oh, so beautiful.
Hmm.
Yeah, it had like a very Mughal architecture
Hmm.
vibe to it. That was very pretty. Um,
So
yeah,
go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say that's the second bus crash we see also, because the first bus crash is when Preeti gets
Right.
rescued. So I
Right.
was like, there's a lot of buses crashing in this.
One of the things that made me laugh in this rewatch as well is and it kind of in a like I see what you're doing there, hat tip sort of
Mm,
way, is like, oh, he's literally a hero.
yeah,
He's not just the hero of the film, he is a hero. And he's because
yeah.
he's not just in the Air Force either. He's,
He's like literally rescuing people.
yeah, that's a lot.
Which, by the way, I discovered later because I was like, is that a job? And I discovered that that used to be Prince William's job.
Yeah.
Like he was in the Royal Air Force and his job was basically like helicopter search and rescue. So I was like, okay, cool. And also, that is not exactly, but very similar to what my grandpa did in World War
Mm,
II, because my grandpa was in the army, he wasn't in the Air Force. But they had a thing where they would have to rappel down to drop off food supplies in the
mm,
trenches. So he would be up in the helicopters and then he would rappel down while in enemy territory or like
mm.
close to enemy territory, drop off food samples, and then get back into the helicopter, whatever, and fly off. And
Is
that's
this
one of the
ugh,
reasons he won his medals for bravery. But this was in Burma, on the
I was gonna
Burma
ask.
front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof,
So,
right.
because earlier I think they used to just drop food, but then
Hmm.
often it would get in the hands of the
Right.
Japanese and then the soldiers would be starving. So then
Yeah.
they started doing this thing. So I think my grandpa was one of a few people whose job was, so it's like, that's what my grandpa did, except he didn't like actually rescue random Pakistani girls from buses.
It's even harder
Yeah.
what your grandpa
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
But that was
Uh,
fun.
so what do you, I mean, you've said that you think it depicts Pakistan well. What do you make
Yeah.
of the romance of the two halves of partition and things like that? Like in the wiki entry, one of the arguments that's put forward that's quoted is
Yeah.
talking about how it's significant that these two are probably too old to reproduce when they do
Yeah.
finally get together. I thought that was a very insightful comment. I thought that
I
was
read that and
interesting.
I was like, okay. Also Christy and I, you remember Christy,
Yeah.
right? Christy and I used to argue about Veer-Zaara a lot because she used to tell me, she was like, not only did they not have children, that's fine, but they never slept together. And I'd be like, Christy, shut up. And she'd be like, no, they didn't. But I was like, there is that song. She was like, she's imagining it. So she would just tease me with that because she knew I liked Veer Zara. I mean, she liked it too. She had the poster, but still, it was always, she'd be like, "Nah, they never slept together. Nah." I don't know what to make of that because all of it is already so nonsensical. I
Hmm.
just can't get past the you met someone for 3 days and you're willing to give away your entire. I just don't buy that. I just
I
it
mean,
makes
is
so
part of
much.
it that is part of the love story actually that they see in each other this what like embodiment of the fractured land, because there's all this talk about land, and I see your land and I recognize it as
Yeah,
mine.
yeah.
They both live in each other's for a significant amount of time
Yeah, yeah.
without the other knowing, which is
Right.
which is kind of cool. So it's these um sacrifices they've made to each other are very unknown, which is interesting. So it's not just
I feel
um
like that's giving them too much credit, though.
but Yash Chopra has visited this theme so many times. I
He
feel I
has.
I feel like it's not
He
giving too
clearly
much
feels
credit to
very
him.
strongly about
Yeah,
it.
so like I don't know if the characters would ever articulate that, but I think that's there for us to pick up on, and for the sort of overall vision of the film. Because if it wasn't, I mean, they could have been separated lots of other ways if they
Yeah,
didn't choose to do that particular border. And it's not India China, it's India Pakistan, right? So
right.
um yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of, if listeners, you have not looked at the Wikipedia entry for this film, do skim down, because there's various snippets of scholarly discussion of it. It's nothing in length, and I did not go to any of them. I wish I had, but I think that's always worth thinking about, especially because this came out the same year as Mehuna, which also deals with India, Pakistan with
Yeah,
Shah Rukh, right? And
yeah.
those two are very different. So,
Mhm.
and obviously one of those is more on this one is very personal
Right,
scale. That one is more institutional with the formal government exchange and
right.
things like that. So, um,
Don't
but
forget Sunil Shetty with the blue eyes.
right, right, as the rogue
Biggest takeaway
bad
from
actor.
Mehuna.
Um, the biggest takeaway from Mehuna is just, oh God, there's so much. There's so much. I don't even know where to start. Hear our episode on that if you have not already. Um,
The
yeah, I
biggest
don't.
takeaway is what's her face channeling Christina Aguilera or
Some
Zayed giving us our avoid your line.
Avoid Yard. That's what I was trying to remember.
Yes.
All I could think was Super Raw, which is from another a film of that approximate area. How could I forget Avoid Yard, my favoritist quote ever from Indian cinema.
Yes, you need that on a t-shirt.
I do. I
Um,
do.
yeah, I don't know. The movie doesn't make a lot of sense, which is why my enjoyment of it also does not make a lot of sense. But it's like I've seen so many movies that
Oh, sure.
make a lot of sense and they
Yeah,
don't speak to me. And then I've
sure.
seen so many things that are just like very, very much stretching the limits of logic and rationale and stuff, but I still enjoy them. I feel like Veer Zara is best enjoyed if you kind of like put your thinking part of your brain aside, which is hilariously advice that is given to people who are going to watch a
All the
Govinda
time.
movie for the first time,
Sure.
right? They're like,
Sure.
oh, you're going to watch a David Dhawan movie. You need to forget all about logic and then you will enjoy it. But I feel like Veer Zara kind of needs that. So does Jab Tak Hai Jaan, a movie that I know is horrible and yet bizarrely I enjoy.
Well,
Again, I
if it
enjoy it because
has
of Shah Rukh.
its own internal logic, that's fine. Like, it does not need to adhere to real life logic.
Yeah.
That's often not what we're looking for in films, whether we articulate that to ourselves or not.
Yeah.
But I think its internal logic is pretty sound. I don't
There's
It
also,
holds together as a film well,
right.
I think.
Yeah. There's this other thing that Yash Chopra does that I don't think he did when he was younger. I think he started doing it as he got older, where he almost started to feel like some things were meant to be on like a cosmic level. Because
Yeah,
if you look at, I mean, it's so on the nose the fact that
yeah,
he is Qedi number 786, which is like a very important
yeah,
number in Islam, and
yeah.
that started to some extent in Bollywood with Kuli, where that
Yeah.
is also Amitabh Bachchan's
Hmm.
badge, like Kuli number, or whatever. So it's so on the nose, and almost like it's almost like God has ordained these two people to come
Hmm.
together, which I always feel like doesn't God have better things to do? I mean,
Don't they
if I
even
was
say that
God,
in the film? I feel like they say
yeah,
something
they
about that.
do. Yeah. But again,
Or God's
I mean,
testing me or whatever. Like,
right.
no,
But then you
God's
see
not.
those things in even things like Rab Ne Bana Di Jodi, right?
Sure.
Like there's a whole song about that. And
Yeah.
then, the whole like place of worship thing. And
Yeah.
then you see that in Jab Tak Hai Jaan as well, where it's taken to a whole new nonsensical level
Mr.
where
Jesus.
Katrina is convinced that that's the only way that she can keep Shah Rukh alive, which
Yeah.
is the most mind-boggling thing to me. So there's this weird like cosmic thing that Yash Chopra does in his later films, which I think also plays into that whole like tyag aspect. Like you're sacrificing this because I is it supposed to be that you're God's chosen people? Like Veer and Zara were chosen by God to somehow through their love spread love among
And show that India and Pakistan can in
can be
some ways like
friends.
be friends or if
Yeah,
not fully reunite then be amicable and and collegial and collaborative
right.
and understand one another. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think
Yeah.
so. I think so.
But it's so on the nose and it's so annoying.
I just realized
There's
uh
also a fact-based mistake in it that I was like,
oh,
ooh.
tell
Like in
me.
the courtroom scene, one of the jailers, because like two of the jailers are very mean, but then one of the jailers says very nice things about Shahruk's character, about Veer Pratap Singh, and he says something about how he's a Hindu, blah blah blah, and I was like, no, he's not. He's
No, he's
literally a
not.
Sikh.
Yeah.
Like that was a glaring omission, or you're just assuming he doesn't know the difference between a Hindu and a Sikh
Mm.
because he literally is like
I
he's a
mean, he's
Hindu. I'm
got
like, wait,
the
what? So
isn't he
I
wearing
rewound
the
it. Yeah, he's literally wearing the khalsa, and
yeah.
it's not even like his uncle and auntie are Sikhs, and he's not like his name is literally Veer
Yeah.
Pratap Singh. So I was like,
Yeah.
wait, but he's a Sikh though. So that was interesting. You were
One
saying
thing,
something, Beth?
oh, I want to give the movie credit for something that I fully did not remember, and it's quite obvious. I just hadn't remembered it.
Mm,
With Preeti at the beginning says basically, I am just going to be a mom and a wife. I'm never really
yeah,
going to do anything meaningful. And first of all, I was like, ooh, I mean, I am certainly not a person who thinks motherhood is the most important thing any person can do, but I feel like you don't necessarily have to say it means nothing. Like,
right,
raising a human who turns out to be a force of good in the world is no small feat, nor should she have to do it alone. But she says, so like, let me have this little, let me do this trip, let me do this for Bebe. And,
mm,
but then she works at a school. She runs a school, which is
yeah,
very much a sort of low-hanging fruit concept of what a noble life would be. So I was
yeah,
like, oh, well, I'm really glad for her that she had that. And she only had that by giving up the one thing she thought she would do, which was be a wife and mother. Um,
right.
which is that's nice. That's nice for Preeti, for Zara.
Isn't isn't there also a dialogue like this in DDLJ, which I've not seen in a long time? But isn't there a dialogue where Kajol tries to convince
I
either
think
Amrish
so.
Puri or
Yeah,
Farida Jalal with some version of this
I
where
think
she's like,
so.
I know I have to get married to like Parmeet Sethi or whatever at some point
Hmm.
anyway, but then let me at least do this one like you road
Hmm.
trip.
Yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, though, I do have to say that this is a very South Asian thing. And
Oh,
if
sure.
we are to believe that Veer-Zaara is in fact set during the 80s, and she says it at that time, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
DDLG is also an older movie, that is very much a thing where it's kind of like, listen, you can do all the studies you want, you can go get a PhD, and you can become like a molecular biologist, or you can be a pediatrician, whatever the heck. But the most important thing is you're going to be a wife
Sure.
and a mom, which is
Yeah.
why so many even working women who have really good careers do quit those because they're always told that that is always secondary and not as important as being a wife and a mom.
Hmm.
So that does track
Hmm.
within, because even now, even in 2024,
Hmm.
that thinking would not be considered particularly unusual.
I mean, it's not all
Um,
that unusual in the US in parts either, right? Like, look at all
yeah.
those Mormon mommy bloggers and
Or
stuff
the
who are,
trad wives on
yeah,
Instagram. Instagram
sort of
keeps showing
like,
me trad wives. I'm like, I'm not the demographic Instagram.
no,
I don't
no.
want to be a trad wife.
I wonder if she had married Manoj Bajpayee, whose
Mm,
character's name I refuse to commit to memory.
I can't
I
remember.
gather it seemed to me that she would have been a political wife, which is a kind
Yes.
of different role because you would be, if not fully public facing, interacting with a lot of people outside your household who are very
Hmm.
important and whom so that she wouldn't have been like just a wife and mom anyway
Right, that's true. She would
in
be
that
playing
particular
some sort
marriage.
of
But
role at
maybe
least.
she's too young to have sorted that out when she has that dialogue because she is, 20 or whatever. And she
Yeah.
seems fairly protected from what her dad does, as far as I could tell. Um,
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem like Kiran Kher particularly does
no,
much anyway with like that whole household of
that's
servants
true.
and stuff either. The
That's
other thing
true.
I'm confused about from like a timeline perspective. Okay, so Preeti's nikah gets cancelled,
Uh-huh.
and then she, at what point does she go to India? Like, does she go when she's like that
I
young
don't
and her
know.
parents let her go? Because that's also kind
I
of
assume her
insane.
parents die and then she goes, but
Okay.
I'm assuming it's within a year or two. And I assume she gets there before his adoptive parents die
Right.
because they, yeah, or unless she just brings all her money and buys the school or something. I mean, I don't know.
My assumption is that she goes to India while Amitabh Bachchan and Hema Malini
Yeah,
are still alive. And by
yeah,
the way, did you know that Yash Chopra offered the role that went to Amitabh Bachchan? He actually offered it to Dharam, and Dharam
yeah.
declined because the trivia thing said that he didn't have a good relationship with Yash Raj, which I was not aware of. But I would have liked to see Dharam and Hema together, though. I will say that
I mean, I thought Amitabh was really good in this
he was
film.
really good.
And I know I'm a bigger fan of his than you are. He is one of those people that for me, generally speaking, I'm sure there's a few exceptions. I'm so used to him being good that I kind of forget to notice he's good, you know?
Mm,
So, I mean, like I shouldn't have been surprised he was good in this role, but I really was like, and this is not, you know, um showboating patriarch the way some of his contemporary roles of this time are. This is a
yeah.
much more interesting role. It's got some of the same twinkle as the goat herd and Paheli, for example,
Mm,
this same year, right? So or similar. So I just really liked it. I thought he modulated everything really nicely and was, added a
yeah.
little bit of bluster here and there, but not really. And like it was, joking and he's very kind. And I mean, it's a nice character, but I thought he really, really nailed.
Yeah. I was surprised at how nice he was because I think
Mhm.
in roles like this he can really go all out with the
Oh yeah.
hemming.
And he didn't.
And I was surprised that he didn't.
Yeah.
So does that mean that he chose to rein it in, or does it mean that Yash Chopra made him rein
And I
it in?
guess
I don't know.
the film of his I've seen most recently before this is Boom, where he
Hmm.
is, obviously quite a bit over the top in a way, as is the
Yeah.
character. But yeah, I was quite delighted
I liked
by
Hema
him
as
in
well
this
in
film.
this. I think
Uh-huh.
she's sweet.
Hmm.
It's like a small role, but she has like great
Hmm.
chemistry with Amitabh. I thought the
Hmm.
scene where she interacts with Preeti, where she's like braiding her
Her
hair
hair,
and stuff,
yeah.
is so cute.
It
And like
was cute.
they're yeah, and it she really I did understand and get and appreciate those bits where you can tell that Amitabh and Hema are really besotted with her,
Yes.
and they really would very much like Veer to marry her and for her to be
Hmm.
their daughter-in-law because she fits so
What they want.
well
Yeah.
with them, and she's you
Yeah.
can tell that there's such an attraction with all of them. And I think if it weren't for the drama and the circumstance, all the bad things that happen, I can totally see this family unit working.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they would be such a good combination, all four of them, because even though she's from like a super rich family and stuff and she lives in a big city and not like in a village or whatever, I feel like she has enough heart and she's like a decent enough person that I feel like she could live in that village and live as part of that like family and community. I think
I
she
mean, I
could
think
be really
especially
happy.
because she does seem to want to do something with her life
Yeah.
other than domestically.
Right.
And she's perhaps young enough that you could still, you
Mm,
know, she's the age of quite a few people when they go off to college and they discover something
right.
they've never known and they really shine in it and they really take to it. So it's I
Yeah.
kind of think of it like that. And maybe I'm underestimating how old she's supposed to be, but she did really give like no more than 22 or so to me. But
I really felt like she must have been like 20 or something because there's also no reference whatsoever to like, oh, I'm getting late for
school,
college, or,
yeah,
like I have
yeah,
exams coming up, or and so I
yeah.
would almost assume that she's done with college.
And I wonder if that's one reason she spoke so passionately to almost a stranger
Hmm.
about the importance of women's education is maybe she had
Right.
gotten as much as she wanted. I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
There are
see.
very nice things in this film for sure. It's
Yeah.
the romance that doesn't work for me. And but in the courtroom, Mm.
Right.
um, that's a big chunk. Those are big chunks of the movie.
Yeah. And
But
Ronnie.
yeah, yeah. Her little interactions with Shahrukh in the cell are okay, but I wouldn't give them
Mm,
any more than okay. Like I know
yeah.
they can, I feel like they can both do better than that. I do kind of wonder if do they have any other movies together where they are not a romantic pair? Like I wonder if they couldn't convert their romantic chemistry
Mm.
into another setting, or I couldn't, right? As a viewer, I could not accept seeing them in a different
Nothing comes to
relationship.
mind. I feel like
Yeah,
I've always seen Shah Rukh and Rani together, as
yeah,
opposed to say Bebo, where yeah,
right,
Shah Rukh and Bebo are paired together in like Ravan and Ahsoka, but then she's also his sister-in-law in K3G and stuff. But I
right.
feel like Shah Rukh and Kajal and Shah Rukh and Rani, they're always a romantic pair, right?
What, Chalte Chalte, Paheli,
A little
Kuch
bit of
Kuch,
K3G, a little
yeah,
bit of
K3G,
K3G, and then Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. Yeah, I mean, they're always paired together, I feel like.
yeah.
This is one of those movies that Aishwarya was supposed to do, but
Mm.
not Preeti's role. She apparently was going to do Rani's role, and I just don't see that either. I just don't understand the lawyer's character. I feel like it needed to be more fleshed out, and I didn't quite understand Anupam Kher's character either. Like I didn't. I was
And
like,
I love how he's just like, I quit the law now. You've shown me the light. Like, what?
yeah. He
I
was
lost
very
one case,
like,
so I'm out. Like, what?
I didn't
A
quite
little too
understand that
tidy.
either. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this that is a little too like tied up very neatly with a bow.
It's not that I want this movie to be longer, but I would have liked, because Ronnie has a lot of energy devoted to talking about her dad, her deceased dad,
Yeah.
who clearly was an influence on her. And we have interesting parental influence in this movie. So I would have liked to
Mm.
have seen, would have been a fun get, like, again, I know I'm not gonna, I promise I'm not gonna say Farouk Sheikh for everything we talk about, but like, what if Farouk Sheikh had had like a 2-minute cameo as her dad? That would have been so
Yeah.
charming. Or any Dharmendra, anyone, right?
Right.
Any one of those guys. Um, Shashi, like literally anybody. Vinod Khanna could come
Right.
back. Rishi oh, Rishi would have been fun. Um,
Yeah.
Rishi would have been fun in Anupam's role, actually. But
Right. Actually, yes, the
I do think
bluster.
Anupam Kher is good. He's annoying in real life, obviously, but like as an actor,
Yeah.
when he's not doing comedy uncle in the extreme, or like you give him buck, what is the movie where he has buck teeth? Anyway, but like when he's playing a more
Is
kind
it
of
Chalbaz? Wait, no, he
maybe
doesn't have his.
maybe
I don't
steady
know.
character, I really like him. I
Yeah.
think he's very good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted a little bit more for her, because she comes off as a, you know, she and Zara are both a little bit manic pixie dream girl, right?
Mm.
A little bit. And they do give Ronnie like professional, she's kind of like a professional manic pixie dream girl. Not that she's a
Yeah.
professional of doing that, but she is a professional. And this is kind of the energy she has. We love a scrappy underdog. We especially love a young woman
Right.
taking on the system and fighting for something that's right. That's great. And she wants to make a name for herself. That's great. She's gone out on her, relatively on her own as a lawyer. Amazing. You go, girl.
Hmm.
I also, yeah, I loved her with her little briefcase. Like, yes.
Yeah.
But wait, where was I going with that? Oh no. Oh no, the train has fallen off the tracks
Oh.
entirely. Wah! Yeah, I think I wanted a little bit of with all the time that we had in this movie, a smidge more backstory for her would
Yeah.
not go amiss, in my opinion. For me, you could cut some of these songs, but I know people
Yeah.
really love the music in this movie.
I love the music.
I know,
Yeah.
and I just don't care. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know where you would have put it, but
I don't know where you would have put it either, but
well,
yeah,
you
I
could cut
didn't.
his dumb poem. His dumb poem is dumb, says the
Well, there's two
non-Hindu
poems.
nerd.
There's a poem at the beginning of the movie too.
Well, right, that too.
Where, like when the credits, right
Yeah.
before the credits or whatever, there's a poem that it's in Yash Chopra's voice. It's actually a really
Yep.
nice poem. And
Mm.
then there's the poem
The
that
courtroom
Shahrukh says
poem.
as well, the poetry poem. So yeah, there was a lot of opportunities to edit in this movie, and I would have liked. Not that I'm usually interested in a backstory for Rani, but at least it would have made a little bit more sense because I just did not understand why
It's
she
like
was so
they
into
brought it up, but
this
then they
story.
kind of like
Yeah,
hinted a thing, and then they didn't really show it. But I don't think her having a deceased father who was influential to her actually matters. So if
yeah,
you bring it up, do something with it. But it didn't. Now, again, I did fast forward through most of the courtroom stuff, so maybe there's something in there that like, ugh, but
not
I don't
really.
think it was necessary.
Yeah, no. I will say that like I find it very interesting. Like in Yash Chopra's movies, there's two kinds of parents, right? There's the ultra hands-off parent who, for some reason, thinks that their child is their best friend, which is very questionable parenting. Like, for example,
Yeah.
Shashi Kapoor and Kabhi Kabhi, like those parents
Right.
where they're just fun and they're just like
Yeah.
funny and they're like, let's get drunk together, or like Anupam Kher and DDLJ. Or there's the really like autocratic parent who just this is the law, and it's always the father, which we've seen so much of. We've seen Amrish Puri in DDLJ, we've seen Amitabh in like Mohabbatein. I know that's an Aditya Chopra movie, but it's still the YRF thingy. So there's always these like two extremes, which is why it was a little bit refreshing for me to be able to see Amitabh and Hema being neither of those guys. Like
Yeah.
they're not Veer's best friends,
No,
and they're not silly and goofy, but they're also not these like crazy people.
no.
They were actually very normal, I thought,
And I
which
think
is
Karen Pierce's
rare.
character basically is
Yeah,
normal
she's
as
very
well,
normal as
right?
well. Yeah. So, which is interesting because I feel like Yash Chopra's ideas of parenting are very like two extremes, both bad. I mean, look at the parenting in K3G as well. That's horrible.
Right. Terrible
Well,
parenting.
although Kajal's dad, Aloknath,
Yeah,
is a
he's
normal
okay.
parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how much time does he have? They kill him off. By
I
the
mean, if
way,
we had
Amazon.
normal parents, there would be no films.
This is
So
true.
there's a
Also,
lot of
I
bad
always
parenting.
remind myself anytime I watch a movie and I'm questioning the stupid shit that the character does, I remind myself if they didn't do the stupid shit, the movie would not
No
exist.
movie. Right.
Or sometimes I'll watch a movie and I'm like, you guys, if the two of you just sat down and calmly discussed your
Use your
problem and
words.
communicated and sorted out the issue, it would be so much better. But then I'm like, okay, but then how are we going to watch a movie for 2.5 hours? They kind of have to do those
And
stupid
to its
things.
credit, this movie does not have that.
Right.
No one is miscommunicating or not communicating in
Right.
this movie. And given that it's the 80s, how would they know?
Right.
Although why does he not he must say why he doesn't try to write to his parents back in India. Does he
He
say
doesn't
something
say
about
no, but he does say that when the bus crash happened and they assumed that he was dead because his name was in the
that's
bus or
right.
whatever.
That's
he
right.
he said that he would rather his parents think he was dead rather than they think that he was like missing or imprisoned, because then they would spend their whole life looking for him. But at least if they think he's
Right.
dead, then they don't have to think about, which
And
which
this
makes sense.
this rules out the option of like I could write them a letter once a month.
No,
That
because like if he did that, then they would probably spend their whole life trying to somehow get him out of that jail, right?
sure, but that's not
And
the
he
same
doesn't
as
want to put them
looking.
through that.
That's not the same as looking for him like he's missing. That's a different
Right,
quest.
but I think it's kind of like they would spend their whole life just chasing this impossible thing
Yeah,
rather than
I
if they think
guess.
he's dead and it's done, like that's it.
Yeah.
Like there's so many news that you read in India, like all the time, this happens all the time, where Pakistani fishermen and Indian
Right.
fishermen, they keep crossing the border
Yeah.
because it's water. How are you
It's the
supposed to,
water.
like, there's no
Yeah.
border there. And every single year fishermen on either side get like apprehended by the Coast Guard of either
Mm.
country, which
Hmm.
tells them, "Hey, you shouldn't be here. You should turn around." But at least they do that now. In the past, they would just get arrested,
Right.
and there were so many people like that who were arrested
Mm.
because it's even happened with farmers.
Yeah.
Because India and Pakistan, there's almost 4 states that share borders, so it's like Punjab, Kashmir, Gujarat, and Rajasthan, right? So there's 4 states. So it's even happened. They don't have like a
Yeah.
barbed wire fence. So
Right.
there's literally goat herds
Yeah.
across countries have like wandered off, and they're like,
Sure.
oh, I am in the wrong. Oh, okay, fine, I'll turn back. But the people used to get arrested all the time. So yeah.
I also really like in this movie on the
And then
topic of
there's all these letters and the government's trying to
yeah,
like figuring it out, which I'm like, it's a fisherman, it's a goat herd, just let them
just let them
go.
go home. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love in this movie that the parents respect one another as well. They
Yeah.
compliment one another. That's really nice. Like nobody is there's not jingoism in terms of like a competitive
Hmm.
jingoism in this movie. Like there's a
Hmm.
lot of I boy, my India is awesome, but
Right.
not in a militaristic way,
Yeah.
which is a nice change.
Yeah. It's I feel like this movie's also like a product of its times.
Oh, sure.
So it's kind of like I unironically enjoy DDLJ despite all of its problems. But
Mhm.
I have a lot of fun watching the movie. I really enjoy it, and it is a product of its time. And a lot of those movies are
Mhm.
products of their times. We can't really, because there's movies that are made now that, in theory, are made so much better, and I just don't enjoy them. Like, I can't necessarily pick them apart and say this doesn't make sense and that doesn't make sense, but they're also not fun.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I'll take Veer Zara, warts and all, over so many of the recent movies that I've seen that they're not as ridiculous, but I just don't vibe with them.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the ideal would be a movie that just makes a lot of sense and is also adorable, right? Like Lapata Ladies. No complaints. Loved
Mm.
it. But am I going to be watching Lapata Ladies 20 years down the line, sobbing at night, cuddling my cat, being sad about
If it
Veer?
had Shah Rukh in it, yes, you
If it
would.
had Shah Rukh, look, Shah Rukh in anything is my jam. I can watch Chamatkar and Guddu and all of his terrible movies, and I still enjoy them. So there's that.
Where do you put this in your sort of Yash Chopra rank?
um, Pretty high, I would say. I know there's movies of his that are far better, like Kalapathar. What a phenomenal movie.
Mm,
You just won't see me
yeah.
watching it over and over. It's too harsh. It's just too sad, it's too harsh, it's too tragic, and I just don't have the energy for that. I would put this very high up. I think it's one of my favorite Yash Chopra films for sure.
Mm.
But also it is a lot, and it takes a lot out of you, because I cry every time I see this film. I cry even when like the opening strains of a song starts, because the
Aw,
lyrics themselves are also schmaltzy. So it's kind of like,
yeah.
but then I also unironically really, really love K3G. So this is very much in the K3G
Mm.
wheelhouse for me. So yeah, pretty high, I would say, with Yash Chopra films. But my favorite Yash Chopra Shah Rukh combo is definitely Dar, because that movie's amazing.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. And Dil To Pagal Hai is probably lowest in my, it's, that movie makes no
Oh,
sense.
interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I
Because what is
apologize.
what is the other Yash Chopra and Shah Rukh film that we said? We said there were four.
Jab Tak Hai Jaan.
Oh God, no! Jab Tak
And
Hai Jaan would be the worst.
I think my video has frozen. I apologize, YouTube viewers. Okay, this happens when we talk about various people. The frozen face I have on this podcast is really cracking me up. I can see it in my Zoom window. Um, since technological difficulties might get the moment of us at any, or get the better of us at any moment, are there? I have no concluding thoughts on this movie, really. I think that I have not shared. Do you?
Um,
Do we
Not
need
really. I
to
feel
do
like
we need to represent Veer-Zaara with ice cream?
no. I
Okay.
think we should just represent the people with ice cream. Because I remember I tried to assign an ice cream flavor to Doom, and you were like, "What?" Um, yeah, no. I think this is just like classic Yash Chopra, but
Hmm.
then he was like an old man when he made this movie. I don't mean that in like a rude way. He legit was an older, like he was
Yeah.
a senior director when he made this movie. And I do think that sometimes when people are older, like, they do get a bit more sentimental, and they do get a little bit more nostalgic. And a lot of times they do let their feelings get away with them in terms of the kind of films they make, like in terms of like they just tend to make more schmaltzy stuff, I think, when they're older, and I think that's okay. um it's gonna happen to all of us.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So yeah, so it's okay. But I like this movie. And if anyone likes Veer Zara, please tell me if you like the movie. And if you don't like the movie, tell me why you don't. And also, do you want to see more Divya Datta? Because I like Divya Datta and I want to see more of her. Also, Beth, aren't you the person who once told me that Baman Irani is like the same age as Shah Rukh or something? Or younger even?
Probably,
Yeah.
probably.
So yes, it cracked me up that he was the patriarch, and he was like being mad at Shah Rukh. I was like, you're the same age.
The same age as someone.
Yeah, Amir maybe.
Oh no,
I don't know.
he is 6 years older than the three cons.
Okay, that's
But
still
that
like
is
six is not.
not as much as you'd think.
Yeah. Also, I feel like this is one of the few Baman Irani movies I've seen where he's kind of like a negative character, because usually he's just playing
Yeah,
these like goofy, affable
yeah,
people.
yeah.
Also, I watched this movie on Amazon Prime Video, and Amazon does this annoying thing where when the credits of the whatever you're watching start rolling, it tries to autoplay
Oh,
something
sure.
that it thinks you should watch, as if I need to watch something right after spending 3 hours and 18 minutes watching a movie. And it tried to autoplay Mohabbatein.
Mm.
So I was like,
Mm-mm-mm.
shut up, Amazon. I am not going to do this. I do
Nice
not have
try.
nice try. It's midnight. I do not have the energy for oily chested, bare chested
Uh.
Uday Chopra. All right, I think that concludes our thoughts on Veer Zara. And happy 20th anniversary to Veer Zara. And I'm sure we'll see a lot of fun, like Instagram reels and stuff come out from
Oh yeah.
YRF and hopefully from Preity Zinta and things like that.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week with another episode.